Turmoil in the OSU president's office. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. Ohio State University has its third president in 3 years. Out of nowhere, OSU President Ted Carter resigned last weekend at a private emergency Board of Trustees meeting. Someone told the board of an inappropriate relationship between Carter and a woman seeking to use public benefits for her personal business. Carter acknowledged the relationship and quit.
As you might imagine, the board was surprised, deeply disappointed, and really saddened to learn of that situation and distressed to consider its consequences to the university.
It appears the woman hosted a veterans employment podcast where Ted Carter appeared frequently. The host, Krisanthe Vlachos, produced the podcast in this studio as a paying private client of WOSU. Laura Bischoff, we do not know the exact nature of the relationship. We do not know exactly what the public benefits were, but it had to have been serious for this to happen so fast.
Yeah, I can't believe it has to do with just like a single podcast. I did find out when Governor DeWine gave the State of the State address. I went down to the State House and tried to talk to various public officials, and I found J.P. Nassif, the president of Jobs Ohio. He said that President Carter, or now former President Carter, introduced him to Vlachos, and then also retired Adjutant General John C. Harris, who is the Director of Veteran Affairs for the state. He also said that Carter made the introduction for him as well. So already there's a couple of entry points where he was, helping her make connections.
It was more than just introductions. Jobs Ohio contracted to pay $60,000 for 4 episodes of the podcast. They only produced one, I believe, with Jobs Ohio as a sponsor.
Sure, and Jobs Ohio is trying to claw back I guess they prepaid, so they're trying to claw the money back. And it's my understanding that Vlachos made a pitch for some sort of an app having to do with using AI to connect veterans with jobs in the utility industry. John Harris said that wasn't right for the Ohio Department of Veteran Services, so they declined. And it's my understanding she made a similar pitch to Jobs Ohio.
It's just, Terry Casey, Ted Carter seemed like he was doing really well. He had just gotten a raise, just got a bonus. He was drawing some criticism from campus, but he was also drawing praise for keeping the university under the radar, especially under the radar of the Trump administration. It's just his fall came so sudden.
It was sudden, but when you're tangled up that way, and when you see pictures in the New York Post of the two of them and her in a leather outfit out at the Broadmoor Luxury Resort in Colorado Springs, it raises even more questions. So I understand a lot of the local media's got a number of public records requests on travel and phone calls and emails, and so I think there's still more to come, and we should find out more, because when you're at that level as president of Ohio State, people know you and you're under scrutiny and you ought to behave accordingly.
Is that part of the thing? When you're president of Case Western Reserve University, you kind of can fly under the radar. In this town, if you're president of Ohio State, you're seriously a public figure.
You are a public figure, and it was the right thing to do to probably let him go. Everywhere but the White House, this seems to matter, by the way. But what I would say is it leaves more questions about how this could happen. The fact that Jobs Ohio is a private entity that is getting public funds, it's getting liquor control funds. My organization lost, actually, on standing, not over whether
trying to make it more transparent.
Right, but it's not transparent. The fact that there was $60,000 paid, which is quite a bit for a podcast. I've never heard of that before. The question becomes, how many jobs were actually created? How was this going to create jobs? Was there undue influence from the president with Jobs Ohio to get this done? There's just a myriad of questions about why this didn't get caught and trapped originally.
Why not place him on leave? I mean, he resigned, but if there is this investigation that's underway, it's not done yet because we don't know the results of it. I guess why not suspend him and then let the let the investigation run its course, and then resign or fire him.
Well, if you suspend them, then all of a sudden, all of the public records requests and inquiries that the media does is going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
I would say that in contracts for coaches, CEOs, university presidents, almost standard language is a morals clause, and you can't be rip-roaring drunk in public. You can't have inappropriate relationships and possibly violating ethics laws. You can't. Like the coach up at Michigan,
Yes.
Violated the morals clause. So I think that was probably at play as well.
And knowing some of the trustees over time, if you've got a cancer affecting Ohio State, it's better to cut it out quick and move on, because if you let something linger and dangle, it makes it worse and worse and worse.
Well, we never got the full story as to why former President Christina Johnson resigned. Michael Drake, her predecessor, retired and then spent 5 years as president of the University of California system. So we never got that full story either. Will we ever know exactly what happened here, do you think, Laura?
Well, I intend to find out along with my colleagues at the Columbus Dispatch, and so we'll continue to file public records requests and work sources and find out what's going on with the leadership at Ohio State, flagship university, that's leading to these disruptions and abrupt changes.
But even with public records, sometimes we don't know, right, Brian?
Sometimes you never know, and it seems like the only person that's been able to survive in this environment is Gordon Gee, who's back on campus, in his other role. I do think that the question that trustees have to ask is, if this keeps happening, if whatever these issues are, what do you do to prevent them in the future?
And there's another factor. People think everybody in the country wants to be president of Ohio State. The reality is this is one of the toughest university jobs, because you've got $4.5 billion budget is in the medical center alone, plus all the professional engineering, law, all these other schools. As one official at Ohio State described for me, there's 33 silos here. And managing that and get people to act, this is a tough job being president. And then there's people in Columbus that are looking out for Columbus's interest, and that isn't always the best interests of Ohio State. So it's a pressure-packed pressure cooker.
Well, speaking of that, the last time OSU replaced a president just 3 years ago, it took about a year to fill the spot. This time, it took about 100 hours. Wednesday night, word leaked out that OSU Executive Vice President and Provost Ravi Bellamkonda would succeed Carter permanently as OSU's president. Bellamkonda has been on campus for a little more than a year.
I have been here a little over 400 days, and I know I have much to learn. But what I do know confidently is this: we know how to win. And each of us at Ohio State, in this room and across our beautiful state, have the agency to create the Ohio State we want to inhabit. And we will choose to exercise this agency in the service of hard things worth doing for the citizens of Ohio and the world.
Bellamkonda has a deep academic resume. He's a bioengineer and a neuroscientist. He came to Ohio State from Emory University in Atlanta, where he served as provost and vice president for academic affairs. Terry Casey, why did this happen so fast? No interim president, right to the top.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got a problem, sometimes it's best to cut it out and move on and do it quickly so that it doesn't linger. But definitely a stretched out process. People would have complained the trustees are too slow and leaving a vacuum there. And this guy, when you look at his resume, it's very good. And at the State House, there were people speculating about Lieutenant Governor Jim Tressel as OSU president, or Gordon Gee, or John Kasich. There's all kind of speculation around. So the academics on the campus ought to be happy that you've got a real academic who understands the whole higher education and is experienced that way.
OSU hasn't, he's only been here a little more than a year,
Right.
but OSU in its recent presidential searches has not hired from within, Brian. This time they did.
Well, it's a tough environment to come into. You have, the lawsuit that you're faced with, the wrestler scandal with Strauss. You have the situation that you're just now facing, replacing the president. You have the pressures on you from the White House. You have the issue that happened, the First Amendment issue with the Salmon Chase issue, that happened. You have lawsuits over the Palestinian protests. Some of those are things every campus would have. I would think that maybe part of this is they need to move on and get somebody in there to move on, and you can't really hire from the outside without getting that done quickly. But you would hope this president would resolve it. Maybe there's some even settlement on that Ressler case and some of the other things.
He said in his press conference, Bellamkonda basically said the same thing that Carter was saying. We're going to take all these issues seriously, whether it be Wexner's names on the buildings or the Strauss settlement lawsuits, or even the chalking on the sidewalk. They were going to look at everything again. He wasn't committal on any of those things.
Right. What's interesting is that Terry's right. Like, being president of Ohio State, you're running a sports franchise. You have a major medical center, all these academics. And you also have to serve the constituency of students, faculty, and legislators. I think that the Ohio legislature has been much more involved with, like, Senate Bill 1 in terms of how public universities should operate or should not operate. And I don't expect that that's going to change. So it'll be interesting to see how he manages that constituency.
This is not a private university, Ohio State. 60,000 students, nearly 60,000 employees if you count the medical center. It's a small to medium-sized city. Shouldn't the selection of the leader be more open and transparent than it has been?
Well, ideally, you can say everybody ought to be involved and everyone should have their opinion heard. But legally, under Ohio law, it's the 15 members of the trustees who have that power and that responsibility. So clearly, until the legislature changes the law, the trustees are the ones responsible for making those decisions.
But they could run it differently. They could name who the finalists are and have them interviewed in public and things like that.
Well, but I remember when Guy came back for the second time, they were going after the president of Arizona State. But once the word got out, they were looking at him. The people at Arizona State upped his offer to keep him there. So if you try and make an open process where everyone knows who you're looking at, suddenly some of your best candidates disappear because they don't want to go through either the meat grinder of being considered and rejected.
I think that more transparency just serves a public university better. When you keep a system, a selection system closed off, I think it raises more questions. And also, the new president, he said that a subset of Board of Trustees members came to him on Sunday afternoon saying, this is going to happen tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., and we want you to consider stepping into the role of president. So it didn't even take 100 hours. They were...
Oh, it's 24 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
About a day.
I mean, that is head spinning.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in a large organization that had, a president that had to go in disgrace. And you're throwing somebody into the water and you're going to see if they can swim. In the case of the organization I was in, it turned into somebody that actually was a good president of the union that I was in. But he's either going to sink or swim. This is going to be a real interesting thing. It was not transparent. The
trustees, Terry, the president answers all the questions. The trustees don't. If this one doesn't go well, does pressure come on the trustees? So some of these folks may not be on the board when the next president is named. But
well, I'm old enough to go back to novice G. Fawcett in the 60s and 70s, and there have been a few different mistakes. There was another scandal involving an OSU president and womanizing and a trip to London. There have been presidents who have had drinking problems. There's a variety of issues over time, so it's hard to get it perfect and have it working, but we'll see. But these trustees know they've made some mistakes in the past. How do you right the ship?
We shall see.
Some states elect trustees, by the way.
The voters do, or the
voters
in
do?
Michigan,
Michigan elects the Board of Regents.
Board of Regents, and they oversee just the University of Michigan, or all the systems?
All the systems.
So we don't have we have a Board of Regents.
There's a Michigan Board of Michigan State and Wayne State. Mm-hmm. So but there's no perfect system because it depends on the people, and I'd argue the current board with 15 plus members is almost too big. When you had 9 members, as most of the universities have, that's a smaller number. It's easier to have trustees be a little more responsible when it's a smaller number.
All right. The FirstEnergy executive's bribery trial nears its end in Summit County. Former CEO Chuck Jones and former Senior Vice President Mike Dowling are charged with bribing the state's top utility regulator as part of the nuclear bailout scandal. This week, the defense rested its case, but not before calling a star witness. U.S. Senator Jon Husted testified remotely on what role he played as then Lieutenant Governor in the selection of Sam Randazzo as the Public Utilities Commission chair.
Sam Randazzo was an attorney who represented utilities, who represented consumers. He was considered an industry expert.
Did any of the utilities other than FirstEnergy advocate for Sam Randazzo, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you, sir, play any role in helping the governor evaluate Sam Randazzo and the other candidates for that potential seat?
I tried to collect as much information as I could to give to the governor so that he could make a choice.
Randazzo was under indictment for accepting a $4.5 million bribe when he died by suicide. Husted has not been charged with any wrongdoing. He denies any knowledge of the conspiracy that also put former House Speaker Larry Householder in federal prison. Brian Rothenberg, there were no Perry Mason moments during Jon Husted's testimony. Not much news came out of it.
However, he was forced to be on screen talking about a scandal that is a bit embarrassing. And if I know Washington people, when they put together, television ads, you're going to see more of it. I would say that it was a bad week for Jon Husted in general. I mean, he did that. He had a podcast where he was bumbling and tripping over his words on a podcast. The numbers are going down. There was a poll today that came out that showed Sherrod Brown has a 4-point lead, Amy Acton has a 10-point lead. A national poll says 13% of Americans do not approve of the way.
As far as FirstEnergy and Husted's role,
but as far as that,
there was nothing. He says he was at that infamous meeting right after DeWine was elected with the FirstEnergy executives. Remembers the dinner, but doesn't remember much of what was said at it.
And so, as a communication person, and I did this in CoinGate, you have to really stick to it and you have to really pound it. And I will say, I do think the initial response from the party and from the Sherrod Brown campaign was muted. But given the fact that that's going to be on television, we'll see how that plays.
How big a problem will this be, Terry, for his Senate campaign?
I remember back to 1918 when Nan Whaley was going to make her campaign all about House Bill 6, and she tried that and it went nowhere because, right or wrong, utility regulation is kind of an obscure issue because people don't understand the difference of how that affects their electric bill. And it's pretty complicated and pretty technical. So I think the Plain Dealer, which doesn't like Jon Husted, even in their news story, admitted it was pretty much a nothing burger.
I do want to, in fairness to my friend Nan Whaley, 2018, not 1918. But
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I was going to say, I don't think Nan was born yet.
It seems like that long ago.
It was only 8 years ago, but the problem is there's a shelf life. Some issues are easier understood than others. Sure. This is one that's pretty complicated.
Jon Husted, Laura, was basically speaking on Governor DeWine's behalf. And Governor DeWine was on the witness list, but he was not called to testify. If anyone had the story about how Sam Randazzo was selected for the PUCO, it would have been Governor DeWine. Is there a reason why he wasn't called as a witness? Is it just not done, the sitting governor? Is there a deference?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't been covering the trial up in Akron. Our colleagues at the Akron Beacon-Journal have and been doing a really good job on it. I think that maybe there was some thought that Jon Husted was more involved on the utility side of things. He was, his name came up in all of the exhibits in the federal case, probably as much or maybe more than Governor DeWine. Hard to say, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that they brought him on. He did his best to really say as little as possible and don't make news.
The attorney's job was not to answer questions or get Jon Husted to answer questions about the scandal as a whole. Correct. It was to either prove their defendant's innocence or prove the accused guilt.
Well, like I said, you're gonna see that going on. I mean, right now the Ohio Senate race is a snooze fest. I mean, they're raising money. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of people going back and forth on it. It's gonna heat up. There's a lot of money coming into it. You're gonna see a lot more of him sitting there being questioned. It doesn't look good.
The trial is wrapping up. Laura, you did cover the Larry Householder trial. the executives for FirstEnergy are not going to testify on their own behalf, something that Larry Householder did. Do you think they saw what Larry Householder did and how it turned out and decided, you know what, I'm going to pass?
I mean, they're probably figuring that they have enough evidence to support an acquittal, and they didn't need to take the risk of going on the stand.
And that judge up in Akron has thrown out a number of the charges and allegations, and there's also been some questions of whether evidence that might have been clearing them was not turned over. So there's a lot of technical issues. I don't know how the judge is going to finally frame the case to the jury.
But, getting back to your point, I'm surprised DeWine wasn't questioned. I mean, his chief of staff at the time was married to somebody that used to share an office with Randazzo. A friend of mine, but that's the truth. Yeah. And so, I think that I am surprised DeWine wasn't brought in.
Governor DeWine this week gave his final State of the State address. To get an idea of the governor's priorities as he wraps up his final year in office, he spent about a quarter of his hour-long speech talking about reading, in particular phonics, the science of reading, the curriculum he pushed to the legislature. A move he says is improving reading scores. The governor also called for a ban on AI child porn, a tougher seatbelt law, and he endorsed doubling school recess from 30 minutes to 60 minutes.
Recess gives children the chance to get outside and just be kids. It increases their physical activity. It improves their memory, their attention, their concentration. It helps them stay on task while they're in the classroom. It reduces disruptive behavior in the classroom. It improves children's ability to learn how to share and negotiate. A lot of life skills.
Not a mention in the speech of the high cost of living in Ohio, the housing shortage, rising property taxes, the death penalty. Terry Casey, as much as I would like to debate the merits of 8th graders getting an hour of recess, is that what's on the minds of Ohioans right now?
Well, the reality is when you're in your lame duck year as governor and the budget's already been passed, this final State of the State, you're really not trying to prop up much future legislation because they're busy and distracted for the rest of the year. So, but in general,
why not try to go out with a bang? Laura, he didn't even talk about any working groups. No working groups were announced in this speech.
Mike DeWine loves a good working group.
He does.
We might have a working group on doubling recess time. We'll see. I mean, that's one way to shore up the kindergarten through 8th grade vote there. Yeah. I think that his career has always been about children and advancing their health and safety and their ability to live up to their God-given potential. We've heard him say that multiple times. And I don't think he's going to take on the gun lobby or other really controversial issues this late in his term because he's not going to get anywhere with the legislature on that.
Democrats were annoyed that he didn't bring up property taxes or housing or education, trying to fix the system.
Yeah, you talk about a snooze fest. But let me first say this about recess. If all that stuff is true, we ought to give 60 minutes of recess to legislators every day so that they're more attentive and can think through these things. Now, he's not running for anything else. This is his legacy. And this was the kickoff of a legacy year. When Dick Celeste was there, I remember he had like 60 different trading cards that he gave on all the different things he did. This ignored affordability, it ignored immigration, it ignored school funding, it ignored the property tax issue, it ignored the income tax crisis we may face if Vivek Ramaswamy has his way and gets rid of it, along with the property tax. I mean, I don't know why the people sat through it.
Is legacy about reading and education and taking care of kids and helping them reach their God-given potential? Is that going to? How many people are going to remember that, Terry?
Well, he's trying to finish up strong.
Yeah.
And yes, there's some issues like the recess is more complicated because 600 and some school districts, 600 and some teacher union contracts, you just can't from Columbus say double the recess time from a half hour to an hour without getting into what do you do with the rest of the school day and learning. So I think it's typical of State of the States or State of the Unions. A lot of times you have a lot of puff and fluff and we move on from there.
Charter schools, they could demand it for charter schools. It could be a recruitment item for them.
We're going to have the science of recess. We should have the science to see how it goes. Anyway, time now for our final off-the-record parting shots. Brian Rothenberg up first.
So things have gotten so bad for the Republicans over the war and the numbers that are impacting them all the place that I just recently saw an EMC poll today that showed that the congressman from Dayton is in trouble, down 52-48.
Sorry.
I just got back last week from being in Italy, including Sicily, Malta, and Milan. And while there, I discovered there were Greeks and Romans and Phoenicians and the Spanish and Napoleon doing all this fighting, slavery, all these bad things. So when we were over there and things broke out in the Middle East, it's kind of like, so what else is new? That doesn't make it right, but the history of war in this world is not a good one.
All right. Laura.
In 2011, John Kasich set up Jobs Ohio to move as a private nonprofit, to move at the speed of business, unhampered by ethics laws or open records laws. And now when we have questions about podcast funding and pitches and how they are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars, we cannot get answers to those unless they come through the Jobs Ohio's spin machine. So happy Sunshine Month, everyone.
Well, Democrats were complaining about Governor DeWine's speech this week, and not much in the speech, they say, but they may long for Mike DeWine should Vivek Ramaswamy become governor next year, and wish they had Governor DeWine a more low-key governor in that office. Anyway, that is Columbus on the Record for this week. Don't forget that we're on computers now. You can watch, relive, and share every episode by using the WOSU News YouTube channel. Search for WOSU News on YouTube, and there we are. Also at our website and the PBS app. For our crew and panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.